Welcome to the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. I'm Kevin C. Neese.
And I'm Mike Poteet, and you're listening to episode 64, reviewing Star Trek Discovery, The Galactic Barrier. We'll start off with some Star Trek trivia.
And then we'll find out who wins Star Trek trivia right after we talk about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 4, Episode 10, The Galactic Barrier. It's going to be a great conversation. Stick around. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm okay, Kevin. How are you?
I'm making it. I was thinking about
good.
I was thinking about doing a very creative intro this time, but I thought, forget about it. We'll just say how
creativity.
Creativity.
We
Who needs
scoff
it?
at creativity. We laugh in the face of creativity.
Yeah, because where would we be without it?
If you were a less creative man, I would kill you where you stand.
Oh boy. Oh, I love it. Well, Mike, it has been a great week. I'm excited to be back with you. But I have this itch, this gnawing need for Star Trek trivia.
You got the itch only trivia can scratch. Huh?
Yes.
All right. Well, here they are. Tonight's 3 trivia questions not known to either one of us in advance.
That's right.
All right. We ready?
Yep.
All right. Number 1. Which alien race is introduced in the Next Generation episode, The Wounded?
Ooh.
Which alien race is introduced in the Next Generation episode, The Wounded? Oh, I think I know.
Yeah. See, similar to last time, it's an episode title I know better than I know the episode. Like I probably know the episode. I haven't connected the episode and the title well, so...
Trivia games do often presume you'll know episode names. It's true. All right. So we ready to... You got your answer typed in?
No, I don't have it. Hang on just a minute.
I'm sorry. I don't mean...
Okay, I think I know. I'm going to say that. All right. Ready for the next one.
Number 2. Why does Captain Kirk take the USS Enterprise into Romulan space in the original series episode, The Enterprise Incident? Don't overthink it.
Okay.
All right. We ready for number 3?
Yeah, ready.
Number 3. Why was the color scheme for the original Star Trek uniforms not utilized for Star Trek The Motion Picture?
Oh. Boy, these are interesting questions, sir.
That is interesting, and I hope that's when we get to the answer to that, I hope that's self-evident and we both accept it, because maybe they're going to quote somebody, Bob Justman or somebody on the back. I don't know. Why were the... all right, well, I'm going to have to just make a guess. I don't know.
I would say...
Oh, wait. I read something about this not too long ago.
Oh, really?
I think. No, I don't know. Okay. I've written something, but we'll find out later if it's right or not. I don't know. That was a tougher game than
that was.
Had
it was. That's good. I like a challenge. All right, good. Well, we will find out at the end of the episode how we did on those questions. But in the meantime, let's discuss Season 4, Episode 10 of Star Trek Discovery, The Galactic Barrier.
Yeah, speaking of a challenge, what greater challenge than the Galactic Barrier, right?
Right.
Returning to the scene of some of the original Enterprise's most memorable adventures. And yeah, I liked this episode overall. I'll start with what I liked about it. I really liked we finally got Ruon Tarka's backstory.
Yes.
I remember I had complained on the podcast when we first learned that Tarka was from another dimension, another universe. I said, they're just throwing that in there out of left field and then not doing anything with it, really. And you and David made a very strong case that, it did provide more motivation for Tarka. and helped us understand why he was so intent on destroying the DMA and getting the controller, or the power source for the controller, excuse me. But this episode, you feel it. I mean, by showing us the story rather than just telling us. So I'm glad it came, even if it came a little later than I would have placed it. But they didn't ask me. The writers' room didn't call me. So, but I liked the story of Ruan Tarka's past quite a lot. What did you think of it?
Well, I actually liked the placement of it too. I liked getting his backstory at this point, because I think you might have too, kind of made a lot of decisions about how I felt about Tarka.
Sure.
And seeing that he was, and seeing that he's also not from another dimension, right? But is going to another dimension, which does draw back. I had made parallels between Tarka and Soren. And it really does connect with that. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about that, but you are absolutely right.
It's interesting because I found that compelling that here's this character Oros, who I love, by the way. Mm-hmm. I love I love his design. I love his personality, his motivations. I mean, he's just a great character. And really enjoyed watching him. Don't even know who the actor was who played him.
I do. Would you like his name?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Osric Chow.
Still don't know the actor who played him.
No, I don't know him from other stuff. No, but I know.
Yeah, but Osric Chow, he gave a great performance.
He did. He did.
I couldn't tell anything about the human person who played this character, and that was really cool to me. I really liked that. That was just the nature of the prosthetics and the performance. I thought it was really good. But it was interesting to me that, he's trying to get to this place he calls home, which is this, this paradise realm, basically.
Right.
Which is foretold, in the stories of his culture. Yeah, Kailis, which is foretold in the story of his culture. And I thought, oh, wow. So this really is a story about people trying to get to heaven. That's really what this is. It's very much like the Nexus story. And so that I found really interesting, and really interesting to find that, there's scientific evidence that this thing exists, and so we're going to go after it.
Yeah, that was intriguing. He says, my calculations have proven it's real. And I don't know, I found it even though we didn't see it and only heard about it, you and I talked when we talked about the Generations movie at some point about how hard is it to show a compelling paradise, and we said it's maybe kind of hard. But I found Kailis even just being talked about a little more compelling, because we know that Oros and Tarka want to be there together, and seeing their relationship grow over the course of those flashbacks. The actors really sold me on that relationship, that, they had I don't know if you can call it a meet cute when you're meeting in a prison camp, and one partner they're not partners yet, but one's secretly planning to betray the other, and we don't find that out till later, of course. But the fact that they're like repeating reciting every third digit of the golden ratio to fall asleep, know, and then eventually doing that together as they become friends and then fall in love. And of course, that made the revelation that Tarka's original motivation, which of course by then he'd long left behind, he no longer intended to betray Oros. Anyway, I just found all that so powerful, so moving, so beautifully written, beautifully acted. So the fact that Kailis was going to be something they shared together, unlike the Nexus, which, from what we can tell in Generations, people don't interact with each other in the Nexus. They're in their own little private paradise, which, there's, if you want to talk about that in terms of Christian theology, there is no little private paradise. It's heaven for the new heaven and the new earth for all. But Kailis, there's interaction, and there's this expectation, it's passed down through family lore. So there's that connection there with family. And then there's this expectation that Oros and Tarka will be able to be together in this other heavenly dimension. So I really liked that a lot.
Well, and that's the thing that I think makes the difference in these paradise narratives, because Ron and Brandon really did have that challenge in writing Generations. They had many challenges in writing Generations, but one of them,
doubt.
but one of them was writing this Paradise.
Yeah.
And I think in comparing these two stories, I think we hit upon what makes the difference, because even in those Paradise narratives, they had to try to engraft a wife and children onto Jean-Luc Picard. They had to put Kirk about to go up and tell his then wife, that he's not
never heard of before.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So they had to give them something. And even then it rings hollow because we've never seen or heard from these people before. Patrick gives a wonderful performance when he says, "These are my children," but it just doesn't come off as something real. Yeah. Whereas here, where it's very much grounded in relationship, it's not so much, it doesn't almost matter what Kyle-Ise is like.
Right.
It matters that Oros is going to be there.
Right.
So, whenever I've talked to people about, their conception of heaven or whatever, I've known some very elderly people who would say, I have more friends there than I have here about heaven, and maybe, somebody's gone on before them, and they're saying, I'll get to see them again. I'll get to be with them again. That's what they're really interested in. That's what really draws them to the idea that there's something after death, because it's who they want to be with. And, it's very interesting too that in a previous episode, you made the comment, we were talking about the nature of God, and you made the comment that God is within God's self relational, so that where God is a relational space. And our existence in that is not about, there are a million paintings you can show me of all these people dressed in white robes and, standing in clouds and having pearly gates around them and looking up at this heavenly light that's coming down on their faces as they all smile. And none of it is inspiring to me in the least, because what is that? That's not an existence we actually really want as human beings.
Right.
What we really want is to have a good, full, rich life, engaged in a relationship with other people, and, to finally also be in relationship with God, and therefore, be brought into the sense of our own participation in the divine and all of that. That's huge, and that's hard for us to wrap our heads around. But again, that's a purpose that the incarnation serves, to give us a God we can relate to. That's so that God becomes human, to say, this is what I'm like, come hang out with me.
That relational space within God is not closed off. God is always about bringing more people into relationship with God and with each other.
Yes. The table keeps getting bigger, and we can all see everybody else across it. That's, that's the thing. And I think that is why the Kyle-Ise narrative in this episode is a more effective Paradise narrative than the Nexus narrative in Generations, because it's relationally grounded. That's the key, completely. And that's the point. So I really love that about this episode, and it gave me so much compassion for Tarka, and I knew I was going to get it. I knew eventually I was going to see the other side of this character, and I was going to understand him better. And I still, think he acted rashly and unwisely. He's gotten a little clouded, in terms of what he should do, right? He's impatient. We talk about Paul getting impatient. Brilliant people get impatient with the world. But at the same time, you can really see his motivation, and you really want him to get where he wants to go, and hope that he gets to be with Oros again. I think that'll be great.
It certainly makes it a more compelling predicament for Tarka to be in. And I for that reason, I do still wish it had come earlier. But, we have it now, and it's good. So,
yeah, it is. So what else did you find about this episode?
I found that the sequences in the Galactic Barrier were cinematically stunning in terms of the effects, and in the moment I enjoyed them. When the episode was over, I felt that they'd maybe done a similar thing a little bit better last week, was it, when the ships were, jumping just ahead of each other?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I felt like, I don't know, there was well, for one thing, I felt there was so much techno talk in this episode, and I could hardly stand it at points. Vacuum state fluctuations are creating discrete bubbles of protected space that pass through the galactic barrier at random intervals. Kudos to Anthony Rapp for saying that with a straight face and for getting through that. But I felt it kind of displayed what I see as one of Discovery's faults, is every time we need... they understand that for plots to be engaging, things have to keep getting worse for the characters before they get better. Right. But I feel like Discovery just pulls things out of thin air with technobabble a lot to make that happen this season. So I found the actual trip through the Galactic Barrier exciting in the moment, but I felt like it was kind of treading water narratively in some ways, because... I never thought they really wouldn't make it through. I don't know. I feel like I would have, and I've said it before, I'll admit it again, it's lazy criticism to say, well, it should have been this other thing. But I do think they could have developed Oros and Tarka's story even fuller than they did in those flashbacks if they devoted a whole episode to it. So in some ways, I felt like Discovery tries to, to me, every other week, it feels like they're trying to do too much in this episode. But, I don't know. What did you think about the Galactic Barrier part, which is, after all, the title of the episode?
Right. Oh, I thought it was great. And I loved it. See, this is a thing that Star Trek does all the time. And that is to pull something out of thin air with technobabble. I mean,
but sometimes don't you feel it's more, I don't know.
That feels... I guess that would just have to do with the writing, because it just happens all the time. I mean, it's kind of one of the basic story engines of Star Trek is, the science stuff happens, and that's how we get through it. Then
I will say you get points for defending an earlier episode to me, because in this episode, Stamets says that's the scientific process: hypothesize, test, iterate.
Yes.
So yes, you called that.
well, thank you, and I do think that's true, and I do think that it makes it more interesting to have that stuff happen, because it is, even if it's grounded in wildly theoretical physics, or perhaps none at all, it is interesting and exciting to see those things. We just came off of the Next Generation episode where No One Has Gone Before, where we went to this strange place we've never seen before. And we didn't really have a lot of explanation for how the Traveler does his thing. He just does it. I mean, there's this thing that comes out of the TNG writer's room that a lot of people know, which is Tech the Tech.
When they trust themselves enough not to do that, they being Trek as a franchise, it can work, as you just stated. So,
I'm not. But I just mean that writers know that technical stuff has to happen, and then there's technical people who fill in the gaps, and they write in the script, tech the tech. Oh, we can't tech the tech because the tech won't tech. Well, if we tech the tech in a tech way, can we, because they don't know, and then somebody has to come in and fill that in. And I've always found that a fascinating way to tell the stories, to let like scientific discovery and weird cosmic strangeness, play a role in the actual progression of the narrative. And I thought the whole thing, again, for me, it's all rooted in character. And this gave all our characters a chance to work together and bounce off one another, support one another, in various things. Remember when they're all talking about what they're going to do next,
Okay, well, that was pretty heartbreaking, because we knew something about Earth that the characters from Earth didn't know at that moment. So yes, that was a very effective moment. I'll give you that.
Right. Well, but even just showing them supporting one another, over comms like that, I thought was great. Seeing the interplay between Rillak and Burnham as opposed to the way it was before, the way it is now. Watching those characters progress through this situation was so great. So for me, a lot of that stuff that may just be a few words here and there, or a few looks, or some applause, those kind of things of the characters reacting to what's been done. You see them doing the work teching the tech, getting through the stuff that they have to get through. But there's always that character stuff that's pulled through it. And I think in a lot of ways better than some Star Trek has done it before. So I appreciate that. But, you and I always are going to be on these two sides of this conversation because I appreciate technobabble.
Well, I don't mind. Again, it's not. I don't say no. I'm not one of those people who say no technobabble. And wasn't it better in the old days when Scotty never teched the tech the way LaForge did?
When all that heat and pressure come together, Captain, it's gonna blow. Okay, whatever.
But that's comprehensible technobabble.
Right. That's a little too comprehensible in my view.
Maybe so. But I'm saying I'm not one of those fans who has no patience for the Heisenberg, what's it's doing, the doohickeys and that kind of. But I did like the technical aspect of the episode where while they're inside their spatial cell going through the barrier, they kind of do a reverse Wizard of Oz.
Yes,
where they shift from color into it's not quite sepia, but it's not that far off.
It's desaturated.
I thought they must have made Wizard of Oz references on the set when they did that, or when the film processors did that, because I thought that was a very nice way to indicate visually the strangeness of it all, and going down the looking glass to really mangle my fantasy metaphors there.
Right.
But the character work I really appreciated in this episode. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate any of it. I really thought, for as brief as it was, too, the interaction between Stamets and Adira coming back was just beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, that was just so beautiful at the end of the episode when Stamets says, I will always reach for you if it seems you're hurting. My father never did that for me, so I may do that for you a little more vigorously. I forget his exact line, but
I might do it
that was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
So good. I love that. I love how that relationship is just understood between them, and how much grace they give him, and really Michael gave him a lot of grace too. Like, you're doing a great job,
yeah.
I love that. Just trusting him to figure that stuff out, and he does. And then they have a great conversation about it, and it's beautiful to see them work together. And of course, I'm a huge Adira fan. Anytime they're around, I am just happy.
I was glad they came back. It was nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And once again, I'm just always. I just always love Blue's subtlety as an actor. I think they're fantastic. And I love seeing all the colors coming out in Paul as well, as he grows in relationship to Hugh and Adira and Gray and all of them. Just really getting to see more of him as a person is great. And then also the relationship developing between Saru and T'Rina.
Yes, that was nicely handled. I really liked how they took us from a place of kind of the freshness of first love with Saru at the beginning, right, where he says, I have feelings, and then she's called away and he can't, and nothing's going to happen, and there's this interaction with Culber about how disappointed he is, and that's a nice moment. But then by the end of the episode, that relationship feels dramatically more mature, but it feels authentic because T'Rina says, I need you to be with me in this way, not as the kind of infatuated romantic interest, but as a calming presence. Isn't that what she says? Yeah. And he's able to provide that and be that for her. And that's really, for Doug Jones to pull that off as well as he does is really a remarkable piece of acting to watch.
Well, and to again, just sort of gently communicate something, because she doesn't draw a parallel there. She doesn't draw a dichotomy and say, I don't need to be this way, I need to be this way.
Right.
It's not done. For a Vulcan to say something like that out loud, you just don't do it. She can't have that conversation with Saru, but she can build the relationship with Saru, and she's showing him how. And that's where in that first moment it feels like, you just feel for Saru, like he might feel rejected. Right, because how
could this end anything but badly?
Right. He might feel so rejected by her walking off like that and everything.
Right.
But then when she comes back, she gives him what he needs, to know that she wants him to proceed. And I think that's beautiful. And
but she's authentically asking for something from him.
Yes.
It's not just giving him what he needs. I mean, she's devastated by this news that Navarre is threatened by the new DMA, and
right.
I really don't think her calculations at that moment are, how can I help Saru know what I need to have the relationship with him? It's, I need that calming presence, and will you be that for me? I mean, I think it's she's making herself very vulnerable, and he rises to the occasion.
Right. And what I mean is, it's kind of both at the same time. I mean that, she is building a bridge there with him, and showing him a way they can connect by showing him what she needs. That's what happens so much in this episode, is people reaching out to one another for the things that they need at the moment to get through the moment. And yet there's a relational context around and through it that is nonetheless present. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree with that.
And so it's interesting to see, like, the situation between Michael and Rillak, as they're talking before they set out, and saying, hey, I need this kind of latitude, and I need this kind of latitude, and figuring out where their authorities start and stop. And with Michael making that gesture of letting President Rillak be the one who addresses Discovery before they leave. Yeah. And I think she did, of course, brilliantly, as she would. But it's again, we fade away from her words after a certain point. It's less about what she says and more about what we know she accomplishes, because of the looks we see on people's faces.
Right. She conveys that leadership that Burnham tells her later people need from their presidents.
Yeah.
that sense that they're going to be okay, that you're going to get them through this. It is interesting, such a difference from, they reference in the dialogue their last mission together, which was the Kobayashi Maru episode at the beginning of the season. And, again, I really thought Discovery was setting us up for a big no-win moment for Michael, where Rillak's words prove true. And maybe that'll still happen, but I'm thinking less and less, because the situation was so reversed here where, or maybe not reversal situation, but Burnham's clearly in her element and proving her fitness as captain, by assessing the situation so clearly and helping Rillak. I think she's proven herself a good president so far, but she elevates a notch in this episode, thanks to Burnham's help, telling her, kind of reminding her, because I think Rillak probably knows, but everybody, Rillak, T'Rina, all these delegates and the crew too, are just so devastated by this news that the DMA is now directly threatening the key planets in the Alpha Quadrant, and that they all need reminders, and that includes Rillak in this case, of needing to be reminded perhaps of what her role is to be in this kind of situation.
Well, they make each other better by encouraging one another.
That's a good,
and by giving each other space and respecting each other. I mean, that respect that has grown between them is so important. When we first talked about the whole Kobayashi Maru scenario, I do think, Michael is, facing those moments more and more, and might face a big one. We don't know. But I think Rillak is also learning to see and trust Michael's ability to navigate those moments. That's a big moment here, where Rillak refers back to her words in Kobayashi Maru about the difference between, asking questions and questioning.
Oh, right.
Which I think is really important.
Yeah.
And she does that. She's like, Captain. And Michael's like, we got to do this. And she's like, okay. And there's not nearly as much contention between them. And they're keeping each other clear. And I really, really like that. And I think it's very important to see that supportiveness between them growing. And so I feel what Rillak said about Michael, and essentially was a statement of distrust about Michael's ability to handle the air quotes no-win scenario, right?
Yeah.
And we've gone through a couple of those now, and so I think Rillak's
and she's
trusting
handled
Michael.
them.
Yeah, she's handled them greatly.
Though, I do wonder though if the season ends, and I hate to say this because it seems a little mean spirited, but if the season ends without Michael coming up against one she can't handle,
you might be disappointed.
Well, yes, it's not like I'm rooting for Michael to have that happen to her, because who would wish that on a starship captain? But at the same time, that first episode was so emphatic that was gonna. I don't know. I guess I just would have to deal with the writers weren't taking it in the direction I thought, and that's of course that's their prerogative. He graciously said, but I just feel like there's something more to come from that, and maybe we're being led to believe that, especially last week, where everybody was so concerned she's too close to Book to handle this, and she handled the situation and herself just beautifully. Yeah. But maybe we're being set up to think, okay, well, she is the master of the no-win scenario, and then we'll get our guts punched, and then I'll be complaining that they did it, right? So who knows? Who knows?
Well, that's always the question, whenever a character says something like that, you always have to ask the question, are they the voice of the episode? Are they the voice of the narrative?
Yeah.
Are they the sort of the bringer of wisdom, or are they expressing something that is later going to be proven wrong or navigated around,
Well, and I guess this is the thing, that if it doesn't happen, I feel like the show will have missed an opportunity to deepen Burnham even more. She's already a rich, complicated, fascinating character. And I think by having her come up against one of those situations she can't beat after having beat so many others like it in the course of this season, I think that would feel like she's a little too perfect.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Maybe
it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's interesting that they wrote Bryce out of this episode.
Yeah, is that because the actor has other things to do, or are they going to come back to him working with Kovich?
I don't know, because this is the second time this season Bryce and Christopher have been swapped out. Christopher came in early in the season because Bryce was off doing something, and then Bryce came back, and now Bryce is leaving again, and Christopher's back in that spot. It's like, what's going on
Maybe this
here?
is just how COVID protocols on set are working themselves out in universe.
Wow, that's possible. That's definitely possible. I like Christopher, though. I think he's really cool. And
I don't feel we know much about him.
We don't.
But,
no, we don't know a ton about Bryce either. But
that's true. Although last week I didn't mention this in our review episode, but I meant to. At least I don't think I did. But the differing opinions Bryce and Reese had about the situation was a very nice dramatization of. I won't say polarization, because I don't think it's polarizing yet, or was at the time. But I think that was kind of the meta comment the series was going for, of these people with divided opinions still managing to work together.
Yes.
So I thought Bryce and Reese were put to good use last week that way.
Yeah, I agree. And it's good to get those little moments of insight into these characters who tend to be a little bit more on the edges, but we're getting to know them, and we're getting to like them quite a lot, even though we don't see as much development of them as we do, some of the bigger characters. But it's great that we have all these cool people around us. And
did we know Christopher's name? I guess so, because you said we saw him earlier. I think it's interesting that they would come back to that name when we've got Christopher Pike very much on our minds. And of course, there was Captain Christopher in the original series episode, Tomorrow Was Yesterday.
Right.
And as I said on the podcast before, Christopher means Christ bearer. So every time I hear it, my son's middle name is Christopher. So it just, I perk up when I hear the name Christopher.
Right. I can definitely understand that. And, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that character, but I'm happy to have him around. I like, and this is something that you had talked about earlier in the season, I think, probably with relation to Tilly and Adira and Gray and some of the people who we've seen come and go during Discovery's time, and that you've said, well, that's kind of how life is. We do see people come in and out, and I think, that's really true. And it felt really grounded and good. And even if there are like real world reasons that keep kind of bouncing Bryce out of the narrative, it's still I like that things like that seem kind of unplanned and may
Uh-huh.
not ever pay off narratively,
Right,
whatever,
right.
just kind of happen. I
Yeah.
like that. That makes things feel more grounded and more real. And
That's
so I
right. It
appreciate that.
does. It makes Starfleet feel more real, that people would pursue other opportunities, even if I hate the fact that Tilly left to go teach at Starfleet Academy,
Right?
you know. But it's more realistic than the same people on the bridge all the time, you know,
Hmm.
for seasons at a time. Which of course even the original series didn't do that, as we mentioned in one of our episodes last week.
True.
But
True.
you know, it wasn't. But Next Generation, you know, pretty much it was always the same folks at the same stations, and all the
Hmm.
series generally are that way. So it's nice that they're showing Starfleet can let people pursue various interests or just respond to various needs as they arise.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. I really do. And while we're talking about relationships between characters, there's so many different pairings of characters who go through so many different things in this episode. And for me, it didn't feel like too much for the episode. All of it felt very everything felt like it had enough space in the episode to develop the way it needed to. And the thing I was thinking of next was a relationship between Book and Tarka.
Mm.
As Book's distrust level this episode is more where mine was last episode, right?
Yeah.
Where I was like, why didn't he jump over the console and knock him down? That kind of stuff, where I thought, why is he leaving him on the business end of the console when he knows he's not on
Uh-huh.
board with this and has all this at
Yeah.
stake and all that sort of thing. So for Book to be, pulling his phaser on him, a couple of
Yeah.
times and really, really distrusting him and not knowing what's coming next, and that drawing Tarka's story out of him, I think that was really great. And I really enjoyed seeing Book go through the process that I think we as the audience kind of have gone through, where Tarka has progressively gotten our hackles up and progressively gotten us kind of on the defensive, like, well, we don't trust that guy. And then learning his story is really, really fascinating. It brings to mind something that Fred Rogers used to say, which was, you can't hear someone's story and not love them. The idea that if you really listen and really understand someone else, you can really see who they are as human beings, and whatever mistakes they've made or whatever differences you have kind of fade a bit, and you start to really understand who they are as a person. And I think that's really important to show and to see in this episode and in this series overall, to learn people's stories so that we understand them better. And it's not just one note, heroes and
Yeah.
villains, right?
Yeah.
It's more textured than that. It's more human than that. And you really see Book's defenses go back down in this episode. And he really gets back on board with Tarka. And by the end of their story, you're kind of on board, or I was kind of on board with Book and Tarka.
Well, right. I mean, it's still. I mean, that allows what Mr. Rogers said allows for the possibility that you can hear someone's story and love them in the sense that you understand them and know where they're
Right.
coming from without ultimately having to agree with them or
Right.
endorse what they're doing, or because hearing someone's story doesn't necessarily forgive all.
No,
But,
not at all.
But it is important, and it is good to be reminded that people are people, and
Mhm.
We have to approach others as our fellow human beings, even if we end up in the final analysis saying, I can't be where you are, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And just seeing someone as a human person and being able to act lovingly toward them and to have love for them and concern for them and want the best for them, even when, like with Book and Michael, your actions take you in very opposed directions to one another, but still recognizing, and that's what brings Michael to make that offer last episode to Book, to give him a way out, give him a third way. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all of these narratives and all of these motivations and all of these risks and things that people have at stake all come together in the next, oh my gosh, only 3 episodes.
Well, they've set themselves a task there.
Yeah.
And I do feel the episode lacked a little focus. I do feel that Rillak and Burnham's story, while I understood it intellectually, it didn't quite hit me as strong as I think they wanted it to. But overall, a good episode. And I, again, for being able to finally hear Tarka's story, a very significant episode.
Absolutely. And I thought that was really the heart and the strength of the episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
It just was very powerfully told and very elegantly told. We saw the right moments, and we saw them in the right context, and it just worked beautifully.
And we didn't even mention the amazingness of Oros forgiving Tarka.
Yes.
And Tarka saying, "I don't deserve that," and yet, that was, whether or not Christopher ends up a Christ-like figure, Oros is a Christ-like figure in some ways. Betrayed
Absolutely.
by a friend, even if the friend at that point regrets it, and of course Judas later regretted betraying Christ. But and Oros doesn't die, but as he's in the hands of his enemies, forgiving his betrayer. Yeah. I just found that a very powerful moment and an echo of the gospel.
Absolutely. Not just in the hands of his enemies, but wounded and bleeding,
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Really,
Good point.
just there, having taken on really punishment caused by Tarka, right?
Yeah.
And forgiving Tarka and Tarka saying, "I don't deserve that," but giving it to him anyway.
To heaven.
Yeah, and then who knows, right?
Right, we'll find out.
We'll find out. But it is interesting though too, because there's this place where Oros has gone that Tarka wants to go to,
right.
And it's almost like the Christ figure going to prepare a place.
And he's left behind this symbol, the golden ratio, which is sometimes called the divine ratio.
Yeah.
Or the divine sequence.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. Ooh, I like that, man. Yeah, I'm usually the one with the feelers out for the Christ figures. You beat me to it this week.
Well, it's not a competition.
No, it's not. But no, I mean, that's great. And let's say that too. You say it's not a competition. I know it's a small comment that you're making, but really something that I've said for a long time is that one of the things that would make the difference for us in our lives as Christian people, as human people in general, is to begin to see culture as a conversation, not a confrontation.
Yeah.
And that is what I feel like this season keeps kind of coming back to, that idea of taking confrontations and turning them into conversations. And finding ways to de-escalate and to move past those points of very intense conflict and bring people together as best we know how. Really living out what I was talking about in our discussion of Where No One Has Gone Before, really pushing hard for peace. I love that. It makes me really happy. So man, that's great. This is I'm excited. These last 3 episodes, they're going to air concurrently with Star Trek Picard.
Oh, we're not going to know what to do with ourselves with 2 hour-long episodes. We had, Discovery and Prodigy. That's one thing, but 2 hour-long episodes of Star Trek a week for the next 3 weeks. Yep. I don't know. Can we handle that much Trek? Can we take that much Trek?
I don't know. We're going to have to. It's coming. Here we go. Well, with that in mind, I think it is time to head into our answers for Star Trek trivia.
Yes, culture may not be a competition, but
Star Trek trivia
is.
Absolutely is. Okay.
You're going to count us down to revealing our answers to each other?
Yes, here we go.
All right.
3, 2, 1. All right.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting. So let's find out. Number 1, which alien race is introduced in the Next Generation episode The Wounded? The answer is the Cardassians.
Oh, yay. We both got it.
Point to us both.
Yep.
Number 2, why does Captain Kirk take the Enterprise into Romulan space in the Enterprise incident? I answered to steal the Romulan cloaking device.
Mm-hmm.
You answered to rescue someone.
Yeah, clearly I do not specifically remember the episode.
The answer is to steal the Romulan cloaking device.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's one of those episodes that I have a hard time remembering the title of because, like, every episode is an incident involving the Enterprise.
Well, that's a fair point. It doesn't make you right, but it's a fair point.
Doesn't make me right, yeah. Okay.
All right. And number 3, why was the color scheme for the original Star Trek uniforms not used for Star Trek the Motion Picture? I said the costume department thought the colors would not look good in 70 millimeter. Mm-hmm. And you said they would not photograph correctly on 70 millimeter film stock. So the answer is because producers thought the primary colors would look too cartoony. That's in quotes on the big screen.
Wow. How about that?
Well, do you think that we were both right? I mean, the answer doesn't say anything about film stock.
No, I was literally, I think we both had in mind that it would be some kind of photographic difference with a particular stock they were using. Because that was a thing on the original series. Kirk's shirts were green,
right?
And they showed up gold, except for that one with the wraparound thing, because it was a different kind of fabric and different lighting on different film on the same film stock, right? And so since they're going to different film stock for the motion picture, I thought maybe, it would have something to do with that. And of course, also there's art direction things involved. But it's interesting that we both kind of landed on the film stock thing.
Yeah. And as I said, when we asked the questions, I think a few days ago, I read something about this. But here's my ruling that because the answer on the card specifically brings up the issue of primary colors and uses the word cartoony in quotes as though it's quoting somebody. Now, it doesn't say who. I'm not sure either of us get full credit.
No, I don't think either of us get any credit for it. I think.
No, okay.
I think we have to say we're both wrong.
All right. So we're both wrong on that one. So I had 2 correct and you had 1 correct.
That's right.
Game.
So once again, you have won.
Once again, I have the Golden Self-Sealing Stembolt for another week.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Done.
It's a beautiful, beautiful trophy.
Well, yeah, as long as there are TOS questions on there, you will generally outclass me in the TOS questions. So
well, this is an issue because this card set I have only goes up through Enterprise, the series.
Yeah.
So we'll have to find a good authoritative source that neither of us have read already for Picard and Discovery and Lower Decks and Prodigy.
Well, and the movies,
and the
newer movies.
Well, this includes Enterprise ended after Nemesis, right? So this should have all the movies through Nemesis, but you're right, not the Kelvinverse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so if listeners know of some other trivia sources out there, let us know so we can mix those into the mix.
Agreed. Please do. All right. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Hope everybody's enjoyed it. And Mike, what do we have coming up next episode?
Next time, we're talking to Scott Higa, the Christian nerd. And that should be a fantastic conversation.
That is going to be cool. Those of you who may not know, Scott Higa is the host of the Christian Nerd podcast. For years, he also wrote the Christian Nerd blog. He's an old friend of ours, and we're just excited to have him on the show. So hope everybody will join us for that. And in the meantime, please like, comment, and share. And if you like what you're hearing, please write a review on iTunes or wherever else you're listening. Your reviews help more people find out about the show and let us know how we're doing.
And send us your feedback. You can find us at Gospel Trek Pod on both Twitter and Instagram, and The Gospel According to Star Trek on Facebook. Or you can send us email at gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to include your feedback in the show.
And of course, you can now support the show by subscribing. You'll get early access to each week's topical episode, plus outtakes and bonus content. Cool things like that. So just click the subscribe button wherever you listen. And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time,
I'm Mike Poteet.
And I'm Kevin C. Neese. And as Jesus said in John 10:10, live long and prosper. See you next time.